I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching a tasty pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave. You know the deal. Your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo, whatever's in your mind, be it diet, training, supplementation, bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, it is all on the table as we bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, so what are we now? 5.5 weeks away from the Olympia. Obviously, we're putting everything in motion. We're going to be officially starting everything next week as far as our preview segments. But I want to bring up yesterday's episode of After Hours because somebody brought up a funny comment. We do get a lot of funny comments, live comments, and obviously post recording for After Hours. Somebody said, After Hours is like a box of chocolates. Like obviously the Forrest Gump quote, you never know what you're going to get. Yesterday, so I just full transparency, show's going live. I'm sitting in the background, kind of producing in terms of like the title, thumbnail, changing as we go. If the guys are talking about one subject, I'll try to reflect.
He doesn't even know what to do for a thumbnail. He's changing it 40 times during the show.
I mean, we literally went from an impromptu tour of Greg Valentino's car, which featured 2 piss bottles. So what did I do? I mean, I had to literally put up a thumbnail, put an arrow, piss bottle. And then eventually we got like the entire tour. And I mean, if you haven't seen, if you never thought you would live to see the day where you would see Greg Valentino's outside and inside, and you would walk away wondering, what the hell did I just see? You got to tune in yesterday. But then
he said he didn't show us half the house. That's the funny thing.
And I'm not sure that's not a bad thing, but then
it's a big house. It's a very big house.
It's a huge house, actually. Yeah. But then discussion about Killer Sally, the documentary that just came out, Sally McNeil, that whole story. And, towards the end, Dave, and I know you're going to talk about this next week as well, because I know Rich Rodriguez started talking about professional athletes, and what percentage of them are taking who he knows directly he's either directly or indirectly sold to. I know the name Kirk Radomski came up as well. So the one suggestion that we have received, and I would relay it to you next week, I think Richard Rodriguez, this has got to be one of those Richard Rodriguez episodes with those stories, with the kind of stuff that him, and if you do get Kirk Radomski on, some of the stories, it is going to blow the lid off so many myths about baseball players and how they just get big and strong doing push-ups, eating popcorn and Cracker Jack. But nonetheless, if you haven't watched yesterday's episode of After Hours, it is about 8 different topics all welded into one somewhat neatly constructed show. That is on the channel right now, as is this past Sunday's episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. Now, it was not live because Chris Aceto was in Brazil with Eduardo Correa, and so much of the story was about your discussion about Eduardo Correa. And, Dave, before we get to the question, it is really one of the cool stories of bodybuilding. And this is one of those comeback stories, and we all love a comeback story, but, bodybuilding, it is more unique. It is more special when you have a bodybuilder, such a, an accomplished veteran bodybuilder such as Eduardo Correa, to come back again and again and again, overcome physical, issues, ailments, and get to the point where, you look at him and you're like, holy crap. Not just, okay, good, he's sort of vindicated himself. He looks incredibly good for his stage of his career.
He's going back to the Olympia. So, he won a pro show. He's got to be very good in order to do that, obviously.
But nonetheless, so that discussion, and then, of course, tying that in with Sean Roden, who, of course, this past weekend was the 1-year anniversary of his passing, and the relationship that he and Eduardo Correa had. So some really cool stories. Chris Aceto with a very unique insight. Check that out, Heavy Muscle Radio. Let's go to the questions. The first 2 questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question, Dave, a lot of talk recently on Deca being neurotoxic. Any truth to this? It's been around forever and never has this topic specifically been touched before.
You know, I haven't read any research regarding that. I'm sure there's some esoteric article suggesting that. But look, there's been a lot of bodybuilders back from Arnold's day, you know, and before that have taken Deca Durabolin, you know, and back in Arnold's day, they didn't really have a lot of anabolics. So a lot of them used a lot of Deca, and guys use it today. I think we would have seen some cause and effects. Hey, guys are getting, you know, neurological problems. You know, I wonder what the common causality is. Well, everyone's been taking Deca. We just don't see that. So I really wouldn't worry about that. I mean, it's like some guy today, one of my clients was like, I don't even know if he was a client of mine, said to me, you know, I'm worried about, it was a new client of mine. He was worried about eating potatoes because he read in the pamphlet of the ACE inhibitor he takes for his blood pressure that could cause potassium, you know, retention. Now, if you were taking massive amounts of it, or you had a kidney issue and you weren't flushing, you know, potassium properly, yeah, of course you could. But what happens is you read one little line of one little, you know, pamphlet, and it's taken out of context, and all of a sudden, you know, Deca is causing, you know, Alzheimer's, and potatoes are going to cause you to go into, you know, arrhythmia and have a heart attack because you're on an ACE inhibitor. I mean, that's just not true, you know, and it doesn't happen, you know, like that. But it's good to be informed and understand what's going on. But sometimes you got to take it with a grain of salt. I remember, well, I guess they still do it to this day. If you look at the side effects of every anabolic steroid, every one of them says can cause liver cancer. But there's only been one that they demonstrated in laboratory rats that in massive amounts can potentially cause some liver tumors. And that's Anadrol, you know, maybe one other or something like that. I think it was only Anadrol that they actually were able to, you know, relate that. But because they're all steroids, they put that side effect down for every single one of them. So if you read a pamphlet on Deca or testosterone, it'll say can cause, you know, liver tumors. But they're not even toxic, those compounds to the liver. But they just knee-jerk put that in there because one of them showed that. So once again, a lot of these studies you got to take with a grain of salt.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. What are some of the best ways to lower blood pressure without using, quote, Western medicine? So I think he's talking about more of a holistic approach or some herbs. What have you dealt with as far as lowering blood pressure without using, quote unquote, Western medicine?
You know, the only way to really lower blood pressure in our society is, number one, lose a lot of weight. If you lose a lot of weight, your blood pressure goes down, and or go live in like a very remote place, you know, where there's in the mountains someplace where there's no stress, no cell phones, no, you know, drama. You don't even know what's going on in the world. I guarantee your blood pressure will be perfect, you know, because when I go into the hospital, you know, unfortunately, I've been going to the hospital too many, it seems like once a year for something. When I'm in the hospital for a day or two, they don't even give me my blood pressure medication. They're like, we can't give it to you. Your blood pressure's too low. I'm like, why is my blood pressure so low? Like, I don't know. It's because I have no stress in the hospital. So, you know, that's a big, you know, contributing factor. So there really is no way, unless you don't want to be a bodybuilder anymore, you want to be a yoga guy and just be like weigh 140 pounds, you know? So unfortunately, if you're going to live in today's society, you want to be a bodybuilder, you want to put weight on, you want to eat a lot of food, and, you know, you're going to deal with, you know, social media and constantly being bombarded with images going through your brain. You probably have to take a mild ACE inhibitor if you have a predilection to high blood pressure. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's probably a better way to be. See, I always worry about these natural remedies because let's say you take a natural supplement that kind of mimics what a blood pressure medication would do. The problem is you never know how much you're really absorbing of the stuff and how potent it is from bottle to bottle. Prescription drugs have specific, you know, potency and milligrammage. So if I'm taking 5 milligrams of Ramipril twice a day and I know it elicits a certain blood pressure lowering effect, I can pretty much be guaranteed it. I don't even have to take my blood pressure every day because I know it's going to lower it properly. But if you're taking like an herbal, you don't really know if on a routine 24-hour basis, because no one's taking their blood pressure every hour on the hour throughout the day. You're not going to really know if it's working. So to me, that's not a good. If you have high blood pressure, just take something to address the problem. I think it's important. And these questions, I get a lot of these questions sit on my De Palumbo Experience app, which is my app you can download for your iPhone or your Android phone. You get it in the App Store. It's $29 a month. You get full access to everything I've ever written, all my articles, any video I've ever done is in one place. It's like a library of all my stuff I've done. Plus, we put up a workout every single week. You can get a new workout to try out. Plus, you have unlimited access to asking me questions. And the great thing about it is that you can ask me questions and I answer them in an open forum. So I put the question, I put the answer, and so everyone sees all the questions and all the answers, which gives people, people like to see that because, they don't even realize they have the questions sometimes. And then once a week, I do another like Ask Dave, essentially, only for the app members with the best questions. So there's a video every week of me doing a Q&A on there as well. So it's a great resource. You have access. It's like having Dave Palumbo as your coach in your pocket for $29 a month. Can't go wrong with that. It's a very popular app. We have a lot of members. People seem to really like it a lot. So if you guys are looking for more information, you want to keep yourself up to date, educated, have someone who can answer your questions in a scientific manner, I advise you to go check it out.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us there, the handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us for the first time here on YouTube, we welcome you. We ask that you subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. Let's go to Iron Addict 74. Your opinion of eating carbs before bed during the off season.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I used to always eat carbs before bed, especially if you have, look, let me qualify it a little bit. If you have trouble gaining weight and you're one of these, like a hard gainer, and that was me. If I didn't constantly be bombarding myself with food, I would lose weight. There's nothing wrong with eating carbs before bed. Obviously, you're eating protein. You're not just eating a cookie or a piece of cake before bed. You're having, your protein, carbs, and probably some fats. And it's your last meal and or last shake, whatever it is, and that's fine because you're in an off-season scenario. You don't have to worry about it. But if you happen to be one of these people that gets fat really easily, even in the off-season, like you're an easy gainer, you put size on, but I would probably maybe before bed, I probably would keep the carbs lower, keep protein and fat higher before bed. But once again, if you're trying to gain weight and you're not really, it's harder than you think. Don't worry. I used to wake up in the middle of this is a true story. And I'm horrified to even wonder what my blood sugars were in the morning, but I would get up in the middle of the night twice sometimes. And I would drink 40 grams of protein, it was usually a Metrex shake with 100 grams of carb, Ultra Fuel. I'm talking about in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. would be my first one. Then I'd do another one around 5 a.m. Whenever I would get up to go to the bathroom, I would just have it there and I would just gulp it down and go back to bed. And when I would wake up in the morning, I never was depleted in the morning. I felt carved up in the morning, which was great. So I needed to do that because if I didn't do that, I would not grow. I had a type of metabolism that my muscle gains were only limited by how much food I can put into my body. That's how fast my metabolism was. So for me, I could do that. But for other people, if they did that, they'd be fat slobs. So you have to know what your metabolism is. And then that will dictate, what you're going to eat before bed.
Let's go to good one here. Someone 5 feet behind you. We often talk about fake steroids, and you're also talking about the importance of testing your stuff. If steroids are often fake or underdosed, what's actually in them?
Well, it's a good question, I guess. Who knows? I would venture to guess if a steroid is underdosed. Or it's the wrong. Usually, it's one of two things happens. You test a steroid, and it's not what you think it is. You think it's trenbolone, or you think it's equipoise, and it actually comes back testosterone propionate. So a lot of times they'll just pad these steroids with a cheaper steroid like test propionate, and which is really a bad thing to cheat with because when you take a shot of propionate, it leaves you sore wherever the injection site is. So you kind of know right off the bat, if you're smart, that, hey, I don't think I'm taking Deca because Deca doesn't really hurt when you take a shot of it, but propionate does. And then you test it with the Roy test kits that I sell at my DavePalumbo.com website, and you find out it says propionate. The other scenario is you test the stuff and it comes back good. So it's testosterone. You think it's testosterone, or do you think it's Deca? You test it, it comes back as Deca. But now you're like, well, is it fully dosed or not? It might just be a little bit of Deca. So you go and you buy the semi-quantitative test that we sell. Now, we sell those for test enanthate, testcypionate, it's the same tester, or Deca, durabolin, which is nandrolone decanoate, or tren enanthate. Those are the only ones you can test the quantity of what's in there. And let's say you test a Deca, and it's supposed to be 200 milligrams per ml. It comes back around 100 milligrams per ml. So the question is, what else is in there? Probably nothing. It's probably just oil and it's underdosed. So they didn't want to spend money on putting all the Deca powder. So they put half the Deca powder in there. It's still Deca. And for a lot of people who are lazy, they're going to just test it and they're going to say, oh, it's Deca. That's good. I got a real compound. But meanwhile, it's not dosed properly. So always use the semi-quantitative tests that we sell. And we're trying to make more compounds so that we can test everything. Like the clenbuterol tester. I'm shocked that I don't sell more. We sell a lot of clenbuterol testers, but I'm shocked I don't sell more because remember, women and men use clenbuterol. The clenbuterol test is the best one because it not only does it tell you if it's real, it tells you how much is in there in one tester. So you just, you follow the directions, you put your little sliver of your pill in there, and voila, hey, I got full dose clenbuterol, or hey, I have the very, very low dose clenbuterol, which is probably why I'm not losing any body fat. And you can always take more of it in that sense because it'll tell you how much you got. So that's the case. They're not putting like another drug in there to like, oh, we better put some other powder. We're going to put some vitamin C in there. Nah, they just either put nothing in there, or they underdosed it, or they put the wrong compound in it.
Chris, audit, did bodybuilders in the 90s only use nolvadex to control estrogen?
Here's a little history. I'll give you a little history of that. To answer that question, it's mostly yes. So when I first started, using anabolics, which was in like the early 90s, 91, 92, I think it was 92. The knee-jerk thing was you went on, whatever you went on, you took nolvadex with it, because nolvadex, also known as tamoxifen, blocks estrogen receptors because you didn't want to get bitch tits, right, or gynecomastia. Nolvadex did an okay job in that. It certainly didn't stop it, but it definitely slowed it down. She would take 10 milligrams every 12 hours. That was the going dose. There was no Arimidex. There was no Femara. There was no letrozole, which is Femara. There was no Aromacin. That was the other one I was thinking about. But there was something known as Teslac. Teslac was technically a steroidal compound, but it was an aromatase inhibitor. And I remember reading about it in the Bill Phillips Anabolic Reference Guide. It was like this drug that I had never seen before. And I had this friend. He was a good friend to me at the time. He had this like doctor who would write him. He lived in like Wisconsin. And there was this doctor that would write him prescriptions for anything. He's like, I think I can get a prescription for Teslac. I'm like, Teslac? That was like people knew about that steroid because it was in the reference guide, but no one really ever saw it. So he started accumulating bottles and stuff. The guy gave him a prescription for it, and he filled it on his prescription plan for me. He was paying like $5 a prescription. The stuff was really expensive. And according to Bill Phillips, you had to take 20 pills a day. So a bottle of 100 would only last 5 days. This guy accumulated probably 10 bottles of this stuff, and he sent them to me as a gift. And I remember I used them. I don't even remember what. It might have been for the Junior Nationals in '95, but one of those shows, I used it like the last 3 weeks or something like that, 20 pills a day. And that was the first, I think I might have been the first person to ever use an aromatase inhibitor. And then I remember reading about, like in the mid to late 90s, Arimidex, because I was always looking up the latest journal articles. And I asked my doctor friend, hey, can you write a prescription for this stuff? He didn't even know about it. And he was up on all the steroids too. And he wrote a prescription for both of us, and we both started using it, and we started getting really, really good results. Our estrogen levels went down on blood work, and we looked drier, and I started telling everyone about it. And he was writing prescriptions. This guy was writing prescriptions for everyone because it was not a controlled substance. It's still not a controlled substance to this day. So that's the history of aromatase inhibitors.
Let's go to Paulie B. So we just asked a question about fake roids or underdosed roids and what would be in them. So I guess on a similar plane, this question is about supplements. Can you explain what fillers and stabilizers are used in supplements?
It's not really fillers or stabilizers as much as it is just like with the supplements, they just leave out, a lot of times what should be in there, or there's different grades of whey protein isolate. Companies that really sell cheap protein, most of them don't even use isolate, or they use like a little sprinkle of isolate. So what they'll do is they'll use what we call a blend. They'll use whey concentrate, or they'll use milk protein, concentrate or isolate. And these things have lactose in them. Okay, if you use them and you have lactose sensitivity, you'll know you're going to be in the bathroom. But it's cheaper for them to use, so they put a little bit of isolate just so they can list it on the label. And it's really not a pure isolate. So they're using cheaper proteins. That's the filler in those. Sometimes they'll add maltodextrin, which is basically it's really like sugar. It's a carbohydrate that basically turns into sugar in your body really quickly. Almost can be digested in your mouth. This stuff, it's so quickly digested. They put sometimes they'll put sugar alcohols like erythritol in there to sweeten it up a little bit. There's a lot of different like hidden ways they can put carbs and stuff in there and it's funny, you would think they would fill it with fiber, right? Because at least that's not absorbable, but fiber is expensive, so that no one uses that. Might as well put the regular amount of whey in there. For a while, what companies were doing, they got caught, it was called protein spiking, and some really top level companies got caught doing this, which is kind of sad when you think about it, because you thought you can depend on these companies, and yet they were cheating you. Instead of putting 24, 25 grams of whey isolate per serving, whatever they were doing, they'd put 12 in there, and then they put 12 grams of amino acids. So if you did a test on the product, it would come up as 24 grams of protein, but it wasn't really from whey isolate. You were just getting cheap aminos they were throwing in there, and that was the filler that people are talking about. And that was called protein spiking. A lot of companies got fined for that and had to reformulate and stuff like that. And that's when, Isolized really started selling well, because everyone knew that was something that I would never do. I always, put it out there that I use the best, whey protein isolate that money can buy. And I know that because I go to Glambia, who's the biggest producer of whey, and I say, what's the best one you got? What's the most expensive one you got? Because that's expensive and best go together, unfortunately. And I use the highest yield whey isolate. We're up to 28 grams of protein per 33 gram serving size. No one has that much. You can look at everyone on the market. No one has 28 grams because no one wants to spend the money to do that, because you make less profit on your protein. But that's my shtick. That's my thing with Species, the best quality products, the highest potent ingredients, effective formulas, full transparency. That's what we do. So that's why I put it out there. But there's a lot of ways that these companies can trick you. And it's usually, if the price is too good, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're probably doing something they shouldn't. When I see a protein out there on the market, same size as my tub, and they're selling it at the same price that I paid for it, I know that they're doing something deceptive, because there's no way a company is going to sell protein and make no money on it, okay? Or lose money on it, for that matter. It's not going to happen. It doesn't go. That just doesn't go on. That's how you go out of business. Now, if a company is liquidating themselves and they're going to go out of business and they're trying to just dump some protein, different story. But not a big company. When you see a big company, you go to Price Club and you see these massively discounted prices, you can't do that and stay in business. So think about that when you go buy protein.
Let's go to Sarwat Ghalib. Your tips on building a good lower back.
I mean, I always alternated from week to week. If I train my back once a week, 1 week I would do deadlifts at the end of my back workout, even though deadlifts do involve the legs too, but they definitely thicken the spinal erectors. They thicken the traps, but more so that lower back. If you want a thick, dense lower back, and where your glutes connect into the spinal erectors, deadlifts are the best. There's nothing, and I'm talking like deadlifts off the floor, not the stiff-legged deadlifts off the floor. I would usually do those 1 week, and then I would usually take the next week off of doing those, and I would do like hyper extensions, on the hyper extension machine, holding a weight usually in my hand. I think I would just hold a 45-pound plate or something like that, and just directly stimulate them that way. Now you can definitely get some development from doing that, but you're going to get better development from deadlifting. But I just felt like, because I was training my legs so hard once a week, I didn't want to do deadlifts every single week, so I did them every other week, and that seemed to work well for me, and I did it my whole career, and I had good density in my lower back, and obviously my legs were really good, and my traps were thick, so it worked.
Interesting one here from DBZ. How do you manage a woman's diet prep training during her menstrual cycle? Do you make changes to help her get through these few days, or does she need to tough it out and stick to the plan regardless? So unique perspective, on coaching women, dealing obviously with their specific, cycles.
I swear it seems like whenever I coach women who have problems losing weight, it seems like they get their period every other week. It's like 1 week they're PMSing, 1 week they have the period, 1 week they're recovering from the period. It's like, so, I mean, women get their period. It sucks. They hold water, they get weird food cravings. And the ones that can suck it up and get through it get good results. The ones who succumb to the whatever is going on and maybe are not as tough mentally have more problems. And so what I do find, though, is as women get leaner, their periods don't seem to be as bad. Less body fat, less estrogen production. A lot of times they'll lose the period the last, month or two also before a contest or before, when they're really, really lean, because their body's just, that's what happens, if you get super lean. Also, if you're on any kind of anabolics and even Anavar and Winstrol, sometimes that will prevent you from getting your period as well, which is obviously a welcome thing for women. I have women who don't actually menstruate, but they know they have their period. They're getting crampy, but they're not even having any blood come out because they're so lean and their bodies are so efficient that they don't want to lose anything or any nutrients. So, you have to make accommodations. I try to tell women, if you can't weight train, at least try to do cardio on those days. And a lot of times, a lot of women tell me they feel better when they go to the gym when they have their period. Yeah, they wake up, they got cramps, they feel like crap, but when they get to the gym and actually train, it feels better. So, but if you have a case where you're coaching someone and they're just, annihilated when they get their period that first day or two, let them rest. What are you going to do? I'm not experiencing what they're experiencing, so I have to assume it's pretty bad if they're not going to go to the gym. And, it just, some days and some cycles are worse than others. And that's just the way it goes. It comes, I have competitors who get sick all the time. I'm like, are you sick again? I can't, and I have to ask them, do you have a fever? No, I don't have a fever. Well, get your ass to the gym. You have a fever? Yeah, stay home, go to bed. So it happens. People get sick, they get COVID, they get, they tear a brain, they hurt themselves, not necessarily something that would stop them from competing, but they might get a little pull in their hamstring and they got to baby that. And then they're like, oh, I don't know if I should go to the gym. I said, well, you can train your upper body. I have to be like their psychologist. Look, just because you tore your hamstring doesn't mean you can't train upper body, So you have to manage whatever situation presents itself so that you don't have an excuse why you don't go to the gym. Someone asked me today, they're like, I can't believe I see you in the gym. You got the scooter first. Now you're on crutches. You got the walking boot. You have the cast. How do you do it? I'm like, what's the other option? Sit on the couch and cry about the fact that I can't train my foot or that leg? No, I go and train when I can train. You can't look for excuses not to go, because then there's no excuses when you're not in good shape or you don't feel good, So I don't want to look like a skinny fat, type of look, where I say, oh, poor me, I couldn't go to the gym. I had surgery. I have to stay home on the couch. No, that's no mercy. Find a way to get to the gym.
Strike first, strike fast, no mercy. 3 more questions. Nico Cantemir, Arimidex dosage you must take on PCT. Is there a general guideline or something goes client to client?
I don't do Arimidex on PCT. So when you're off cycle and you're doing your post-cycle therapy, like your HCG, your Clomid is an estrogen receptor blocker right there. So I do none. So I don't recommend, because you're not really producing a lot of testosterone, so there really shouldn't be too much aromatization. If you take Arimidex during that time, a lot of times you'll kill your sex drive because you'll lower your estrogen too much. So after the cycle's over, you might stay on it for a week, but then go off the Arimidex.
Let's go to Jason Kent. Can someone be using tests moderately high levels for a while and still have normal size testicles? Can someone run what you would consider a high dose of test and never really have testicle atrophy? I've never used a test kit for what, but my acne tells me that it must be something real.
I'm not really sure what he means by his acne, but I'll say this, that I know plenty of bodybuilders that have gotten their girlfriends or wives pregnant while on cycle. Ask Ronnie Coleman. It's happened to him. Victor Martinez, ask him. Some guys just don't lose fertility when they're on cycle. So yeah, it is possible to have, testicular full, big testicles just means you're producing sperm down there, right? So if they shrink up, you probably, it doesn't matter. Functionally, you're going to still build muscle because you're taking exogenous hormones, but you're just probably unlikely fertile if your testicles are small. So some guys don't have a problem. And matter of fact, sometimes when you take a lot of steroids, that resensitizes you and starts your body producing testosterone again. Because remember, the testicles produce testosterone because there's a signal there to tell them testicles produce sperm because there's a signal telling the Sertoli cells, make sperm cells. If there's no direct signal from the pituitary saying that, like FSH, but there's a lot of testosterone running through the testicles, that will stimulate those Sertoli cells to make sperm. So when you take exogenous testosterone, it gets watered down throughout your whole body, right? Because you're taking a shot. It's everywhere. When you're producing it in your testicles, it's right there. So when your testicles crank out some testosterone, it bathes those Sertoli cells who then make sperm. If you're taking massive amounts of 2, 3, 4 grams of gear a week, and that's coursing through your system, it's a much higher concentration now going to the testicles. That might turn them back on without you even realizing it. You would think, the more I take, the more suppressed I'm going to be. No, at some point, the more you take, now it starts to actually turn on the testicles. How much that is, it's variable in every person. So you really can't use that as a modicum for either birth control or fertility, type protocol. That's why when I tell people, if you want to get someone pregnant, get off the gear, use my protocol that I give out for free, with the HCG, HMG, Clomid, and glutathione, because that reliably works.
Take one more question from Stephen Bateman. How quickly does Clen take effect? Does it become more effective the longer you use it?
Well, actually, it becomes less effective the longer you use it because the receptors downgrade a little bit. It's very effective the first week you use it, maybe 2 weeks. That's why a lot of people think, well, I'll take it for 2 weeks in a row, and then I'll go off it for 2 weeks, then I'll do 2 weeks in a row, and then I'll go off. The problem is when you go off it, you rebound in the negative direction. So you don't want to stop it. You have to just understand that the first 2 to 3 weeks you use it, you're going to get the most results out of it. And then it'll lower itself down a little bit. That's why we increase the dose progressively as we start, every couple of weeks. So to answer your question, it works very quickly initially. And once again, it doesn't get more effective as you're taking it. It might become a little less effective, but then it's kind of plateaus at a certain point, and it will continue to burn fat, just not at the high rate it did when you first started taking it.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, a reminder, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell over the course of the next months, and obviously leading into Olympia weekend, all sorts of coverage, different formats, different shows, starting next week, our official road to the Olympia. Right now on the RxMuscle YouTube channel, all new episodes of After Hours, yesterday's episode, Sunday's episode of Heavy Muscle Radio, and then, of course, tomorrow, all new episode of Iron Rage with Lee Priest. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.